Hi folks, so I'm doing some prep before a video session that I'm going to be submitting some work for. So this was a good time to go ahead and get set up and kind of test things out. But so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to demonstrate how to make an omelet without needing a non-stick pan. And this is really important to understand because we've been cooking for centuries here in America without the need of a Teflon coated skillet. And that only came about really in 1930s. Um, there was a gentleman who was working for DuPont that was actually working on something else, and at the time they developed this polymer that was just like waxy residue that was actually a result of the freon replacement testing they were doing. Okay, so all of that to the side, we really don't have any need whatsoever of a non-stick pan. What people really need to do is let the pan heat up. Just let it heat up. And it's just so simple. You can let it heat on like medium low. It doesn't really matter which method you use. You can stick it in the oven on 350 while you're making your coffee or setting the coffee program, whatever, standing there enjoying your cup of coffee for the morning, tea, whatever. You can put it in the oven and it can just sit and just let it get good and hot. We're talking about, of course, a heat-proof pan like cast iron or carbon steel or something like that. Well, we use in professional kitchens as an omelet pan is like a carbon steel, very lightweight type of skillet, and it's specifically for making an omelet. There's very tiny, like minute ridges around the edges of the omelet, kind of like a wok. And what that does is it creates thermodynamics that make it easier for substances to slide across them, creating air pockets that make it easier for a substance to slide across them. I'm not a chemist, but my mother was a lab technician for the botany department for several years, and my father worked for the zoology department for 20 years or more. So the phrases and things that we use in our house were very atypical of most families. So a lot of things, as I was going through the research, I was very familiar with the different chemical and medical terminologies. And we don't require a polymer-based resin on our cooking equipment in order to get a non-stick result. Okay, I'm going to show you why. So you see that cast iron pan is well seasoned pan. There's not a lot of oil in it, right? It's just well seasoned pan. And the reason that you don't want a lot of oil in it first is because it starts to smoke. You know, different oils have different smoke points. I run against all of that, but like canola oil has a higher smoke point than olive oil and so on. But you don't want a lot of oil in the pan while it's getting hot because it starts to smoke and you haven't even done anything yet, right? So you just want the pan itself good and hot. And I don't mean like on high hot. I mean on low or medium low until it's good and hot. And it creates a radiant type of heat. Okay. That's the mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to cooking eggs or dairy. They'll slash the heat too hot, too high, too fast. And so you get too much browning on there or separating and curdling and all that stuff. What you want is a good, solid, medium low type of heat when you're cooking eggs. I know this because I used to make omelets for football players who were doing protein load and they wanted 4 egg omelets, not 2 egg omelets, and we had to flip them. And they would line up for those omelets. They took the omelets seriously. So I know a lot about omelet making, and there's just absolutely no reason for us to need Teflon coating on our cooking equipment when we haven't needed it for centuries. It's just the way that we do things as Americans that is causing us to poison ourselves by requiring all these extra chemicals when we can let it heat for 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes at the most on the stove top, or put it in the oven on 350, 10, 15 minutes. And it's good and hot. You take it out of the pot holder. You want it that kind of hot. So it doesn't really require a whole lot on our part, just a little bit more conscious planning maybe. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put some oil in here. Just a little, a tablespoon or two. You won't need much because it's going to spread. I'm going to show you. You see how easily it spreads when the pan is getting hot. Right. And it starts to smoke a little. I'm going to focus more on the pan here. Okay. I'm going to crack a couple of eggs. Alright. So, the main thing with the omelet, I'm not using a whisk. I don't want a bunch of air in there. I'm just using a fork. And you just want to bend it nice. I don't want my pan too hot. So, what the thing that is causing a problem is this genetic chemical that was generated by the chemor's plant, which was formerly DuPont. I think DuPont has now merged with Dow Chemical, and so they're in a different place now. But this genetics has been released into the Cape Fear River for several decades. And so it's a forever chemical that has poisoned, I say poison, but it has contaminated the dirt in the air and the water that it comes in contact with, right? And a forever chemical is a forever chemical. They didn't even know that the filters were not filtering out that stuff. So they found that out in 2017. So, I mean, they've done lawsuits and what have you. The state has started requiring better regulation of that situation. I'm not sure where they are now. The point is, we don't need it in the first place. We use Teflon and a lot of other things, and hey, whatever you want to do is fine. But we don't need it on our cooking equipment. One of the first things that we learn as chefs and cooks and such is that if you heat those nonstick pans too high, you start getting toxic fumes from those things. You don't want to breathe that in. So to me, my mom wouldn't let it in the house. She taught us about that, and she was a lab technician. She taught us not to allow those things in the house. She would never allow a nonstick pan in her kitchen ever. So no, we don't need them. We've been cooking on cast iron and various steel and carbon steel and okay. So I'm just going to show you this right quick, right? The pan is good and hot. Just let it heat up. Put the oil in there. Put the eggs in there. Cook immediately. Like seals off the bottom immediately. Right? And it starts bubbling and everything. So here's what we do in kitchen to let it fully cook. We tilt the pan, slide this back a bit. Get the egg all done. Right? And I'm just going to mush it a little. The egg seals in. Okay. Be bold, be brave. You see how easy that comes up, right? And it's almost always completely cooked. Just like that. No sticking, nothing. Perfect. I don't mean the shape, it's perfect. No, there's no sticking whatsoever. So this is super easy stuff, and you don't have to be a chef or a culinary professional or some kind of scientific expert or anything like that to get that kind of result, And so if you're adding things into your omelet, what you want to do if you're adding things into your omelet, what you want to do is you go ahead and cook your, add-ins, onions, tomato, um, green bell peppers, red bell peppers, whatever. If you're using meat, whatever meat, you add those things in and just let them caramelize a little bit, and you just pour the egg on top of it. The real, the real point that I'm making here is just let your pan get hot. That's all you really want to focus on. Let the pan get good and hot. Heat proof pan, cast iron, carbon steel. Like it's a French omelet pan. They make specific French omelet pans that you can order from different places. But regardless, that's a plain old fashioned cast iron pan. That's it.